coaching call, particularly around how do you show up in a way in a meeting or a conference or even a phone call where you're getting the results that you want, still being authentic to yourself, still feeling good, feeling like you're in the driver's seat, feeling in control. And the idea is that sometimes that just doesn't always happen despite our best intentions. Can you agree with me on that one? I think we all have been there, maybe for whatever reason. And it might be different on the professional versus personal level. So, for example, you might find that you get all these great things accomplished on the personal level, whether it's in your family, getting your kids to eat their dinner at the dinner table, getting your spouse, your partner to comply with a plan that you want to conduct. And then if we're out in the professional world, we notice that may not be as conducive and it might be a little bit harder. And why is that? Why is it harder in one setting versus the other? And so I talked about this with a client I had, and a couple of things came up. A lot of times when we are in an environment that feels really safe, for example, it may be in the family situation, it's not an issue to get the kids to eat the dinner. People do what they're told, and you're showing up as the authority that you are to do whatever you need to do, whether it's asking and requesting for something or asserting yourself and sharing, hey, you need to finish your dinner, whatever it might be. I'm using that as an example. And my client had a good track record of doing that on the home front, really no issues. And then we got to talking about why is that? And there is a couple things going on. So one is the level of safety that you create for yourself. I think if you're used to being on the home front and doing the things that you need to do and getting people to comply and do the things they need to do, then whether it's the chores or eating their dinner, then that is a level of safety you've created for yourself to own the responsibility for you showing up as your full authority in that role. And for whatever reason, that is not the case outside in the external world. And why is that? So one might be you don't feel safe. You feel like you might be getting judged. You're kind of staying stuck in that scarcity mode because there's an anxiety or fear that's coming up for you. And all that really needs to happen is to essentially harness that anxiety and hold the tension between the anxiety and what you want. In other words, showing up as your authority in your own self, your ideal self. That's really what authority is. Owning your ideal self, as I'll always quote Dr. Bob Wright on that. And also showing up for that for yourself, not dodging out of it, maybe diffusing the anxiety, which is maybe you smiling and thinking like maybe this person will listen to me, maybe not. But then what message does that send to the other person? They may not take you seriously in the moment. Maybe they're like, wow, maybe that wasn't really something super needed in the moment because Rachel's laughing and smiling and I guess she's okay with me not doing that. Like there's a lot of boundaries that can be a little flimsy if we're not owning our own power, our own personal power, and showing up in that authority. And so we talked about this in the coaching session and how that is a great trajectory that you want to be on. We all want to get to that space where we're owning our ideal self, but yet we fall short. Whether it's the beliefs that we have that I'm not enough, I'm not strong enough, I don't matter enough, I'm not taken seriously enough. And so those dictate unconsciously how things go. And so the way to get through this, to own your ideal self and to get things done in the ways that you need to do it, are a couple of things. So one is be the authority. The authority meaning your ideal self. So showing up in your power. It means asking for what you want. It might mean using the power of silence. It might mean getting people to do things. It might be just being present for someone, but not diffusing the anxiety, which then is that diffusion of tension, which might mean the nervous laughter, telling the joke. That's one I know was one of my go-tos because it was scary to be in a lot of power and my beliefs around power personally. I won't get into those too much, but they were not very favorable. I thought power was bad. I historically kind of heard stories around people who had power and they weren't very worthy. And those were just family lore, family stories that crept into what I thought and think of power growing up as I thought. And now I get to change that. And now you get to change that. So let's bring this back to you. So for you, whoever you are out there listening, what is it that you'd want to do differently to own your ideal self when it comes to getting things done that you want? Whether it's signing that deal, getting a license done, writing the book, getting the project complete, creating whatever it is, asking for money for fundraising if you're a founder. Maybe it could be any one of those or more. And notice, does this happen pretty well on the home front, internally, and inside, personal life? And if so, great. So there's something you're doing right there that's owning your authority. That means you're probably holding the tension. It means you're setting expectations and keeping them high so that other people know you mean business in a responsible way, in a way that works for everyone. So to me, that's just what needs to be translated for the professional world. Maybe you're the opposite. Maybe in the professional world, you got it all together and you're owning your authority there. People listen to you, you get things done, and you're holding that tension. You're not diffusing the anxiety. However, in the home front, maybe you let things slide and you're just not holding that pull. And so think about it for yourself. How are you doing in these two areas? And I think it's important equally professionally and personally. And then what is it that you'd want to shift? And these are the things to be thinking about. Do I diffuse anxiety? Do I hold that tension, or do I let it go? Because here's the thing, in any group, and a group is two or more people, some individual is usually holding that anxiety unconsciously, meaning the anxiety is going to that person and they feel the fear, like they're literally maybe blabbering on because they can't stop talking, and that's their nervousness. That's the anxiety from the group that is getting transferred to this person. On the other hand, maybe you're the person who has the anxiety and then you realize you have it. You're like, hang on, I'm feeling really crazy amount of fear. This isn't on me. This whole group is responsible. And you can give it back out. You can ask someone else for support or say, well, what would you do? I need your input here. That's you and your authority. That's you completing that picture of putting it back out there. And so I thought this was such an important topic because I think we all deal with this in and day out, not necessarily thinking about our own authority, but figuring out what and how we show up and how we can maximize our results and productivity in this way, as well as get the results that we're looking for. I also want to add that what happens if you're not in that authority, if you're not feeling that ideal self mode and getting to that responsibility of owning your ideal self, because that's hard. If we were all our ideal selves, my guess is all of us would be gazillionaires, making tons of money. We would be having rich lives personally and professionally, not just money, but maybe we'd be living our dream life and our dream job and our dream location and having the dream family and relationships we've all wanted. And that we know is not realistic because we get in the way with our own limiting beliefs that don't serve us, but yet they're unconscious, and 96% of our brain is unconscious, according to some research and resources like Bruce Lipton, who I follow. And so when we are not in our authority, we're in inferiority or superiority. And those are different. Those are two sides of the same coin, where superiority means we are acting like we are in superiority. We're not mutual with other people. We act as if we're better than other folks. And the reality is that's just because usually we are not in a place to own our authority, and we actually feel inferior. Inferior meaning we are not owning our ideal selves, but we feel intimidated. We feel the fear. We let it get to us. We might have imposter syndrome. We might feel like our confidence went out the window. So whether it's inferior, superior, know that the best ground you can be is authoritative in your own way. And then if you are noticing resistance to that, ask yourself, you can just get curious. What are my beliefs around power, around my own personal power? Or think about it like authority. What are my beliefs around authority? And I bet you've got some. I know, like I shared, I had some too. And we all have images when we think of that word authority, right? For me, I think of a policeman. I think of a literally like a caricature cartoon like policeman with the hat and like the Simpsons style kind of thing. And that's one example. But if that's the way I think about authority in my head, chances are that's really impacting the way I show up. Because I don't have to be a dingbat policeman. I could be Rachel, the authority, and show up in ways that really, really serve me. And so can you. That's the whole idea. So, what are you taking from this for yourself? Knowing, okay, if I want ideal outcomes for everything, business, professional, personal, what would it look like to own my own authority? And maybe you're doing a pretty good job of this, but chances are we can all improve it. And no matter how much of an expert you're doing, whether you're even working with a team where someone isn't owning their end of the stick of responsibility, or they aren't owning that ideal self, but they're letting someone walk all over them, and for whatever reason they continue not to step in to take responsibility and finish a project, for example. Who knows? I'm making these things up. In my case, back to my client, we discussed how this was really appealing, how much this was desired in that state, to be in a place where, hey, when I show up, people pay attention to me because I am an authority. And that is a very attractive state to be in. We want to be around people who are commanding in ways that are also nurturing. They don't have to be jerks, and that's totally a judgment if you think of power like that. Like, I historically thought people with power were really annoying or jerks, or things like that, and that's just so not true. And if you're feeling resistance, then there's chances are you've got some kind of belief and this judgment around that authority and power. All right, I hope you take this information, my friend, and you go out there today and own your power, own your own authority as a corporate leader. What would you do differently? One place to start, and I love this one, is asking for things. Ask for things. Can I get a coffee? Can you get me a drink? Can you deliver this thing for me? Can you ask so and so? That's one example, and all of these things can matter. With my client, we talked about the power of silence and how that can be really strong, especially just being present for someone and not diffusing that anxiety, not laughing something off or thinking I got to smile because it's an awkward silence and I'm holding the anxiety. I hope this has given you some food for thought. And if you find this interesting, if you've learned anything today, I would like to share it. Go ahead and just pass this along to potentially a colleague or a friend who could use some support around showing up for themselves, for showing up with clear boundaries on what could be different. I'm so grateful that you're here. Thank you so much. I'll see you next time.